Hey Jade, welcome to Coding Chats with Callie. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me, Callie. It's lovely to be here. I've been like watching you grow over the last few months. It's been really nice to see. I think what you're doing with your building in public is been a really great thing to watch, and I think it's a really hard but brave thing to put yourself out there because it's so hard to I find it really hard to code in public, and it's a daunting thing. So I think it's a great thing to be doing, and I love it. I love seeing it because
Oh,
not a
thanks.
lot of people do it. So
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it worked for me to break into tech. And so I'm hopeful that other people can do it and have success with it too. But I guess we'll see. Nobody's really been like, hey, I just landed a job from building in public. So we'll see if it works. But I hope it helps some people.
is that like how how you started then, like when you got into tech?
Yeah, I actually just built projects and posted about them on LinkedIn. And then in my first job in tech, a recruiter reached out to me. Turns out that the hiring manager had seen one of my projects and was kind of following it along and asked the recruiter to reach out. And then actually my job at HashiCorp, a recruiter saw coding with Callie and reached out because she was like, oh, this is a really cool thing that you're doing. Can we chat? And then it ended up turning into a job, which was nice.
No, that's really cool. Yeah, I know that you kind of went from a software engineer to a software engineer role, didn't you, to site reliability engineer? Was that much of a transition to what you were doing, or was it quite similar stuff that you were doing?
I feel like I'm a junior all over again. So no, it's super different, but it's very cool to kind of be on the other side of it. I had an interest in deployment and DevOps and stuff like that. So once we kind of started talking about the role, it just seemed like a lot to learn and I love learning. So it was cool.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
excited to chat with you though, because you actually have a very different background than most of the people I interview. I feel like I chat with career changers a lot and people who didn't get their computer science degree, but I see that you did. So that's pretty cool. How do you feel like having, what made you decide to get the degree and how did you know so young that you wanted to go into this?
Um, so I didn't initially go into computer science. I initially did a maths degree, so that's
Oh,
what I signed
okay.
up for. I was really good at maths in school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to go to university. It was a natural kind of progression for me. And then I got to university, and um, it was really not a very nice experience. It
I
was a very
know.
different way of working when you go from uh, college maths and then to university maths. And in college it was more like applied mathematics where you were figuring out the problems, whereas when you get to university it's more about understanding proofs and
Yeah.
memorizing proofs, a lot of keywords that you have to memorize. I just wasn't enjoying it very much. And then I was thinking, okay, well, I need to change, and I know that I'm not enjoying it. I failed the year because I just stopped going to classes. And then I met my partner at university, and he was doing computer science, and I started seeing what he was doing a little bit. Could see that it was very very interesting what he was doing, and solving problems. But I never thought I could do it. I always thought people who got into computing or programming were people who had done it for a long time, and I was a
Yeah.
bit apprehensive about doing that. I'd done a little bit of website scripting in school, just HTML, removing there was this website. I don't know if you heard of it, called Pixar, when I was younger, and you could download templates, but the templates had adverts in, and I remember I would remove the adverts from the templates, but that was pretty much the most I got into it. So I never felt like I could do it. And then I was looking at the different options of what I was going to go into. And I was either going to go into IT, or I was going to go into psychology, because they were the subjects that I was interested in. And then my partner at the time was just like, why would you do IT if you could do computer science? Because I had my maths A level, which meant that I could do computer science. Whereas with IT, you didn't need your maths A level, and it just felt like it would be a waste of my like mathematics background to not do the computer science, because he was just like, if you think about it, like the computer science degree is just a combination of maths and IT. And that kind of changed my thought of how to like of what I was going to do. And that's why I ended up doing it. Really, really glad that I did, because when I started working with programming languages, I realized actually how like true that was.
Okay.
I think a few people like say like maths is like, or they get a bit scared when they hear that like programming is like maths, but I think it's not like necessarily that it's like the maths that you've learned in school. It's about the mindset of like what you need to do to complete a problem. It's a
Oh, I like
skill
that.
that is needed. It's a skill that is needed to be good at maths, but it's also a skill that is needed to be like good at computing and computer science, because you need to be able to take a problem that you've, or like take a set of principles that you've seen before and apply that to a new like a new thing that you've not seen before.
I like that way of thinking. It's funny that you mentioned that like you were doing math until you got to proofs, and then you were like, I gotta change, because I loved proofs. I actually studied math as well. And I loved proofs, and I feel like proofs are so similar to like writing a program. So like, did you find any of the similarity, or like, am I just weird that I feel like they're similar? Like, especially like unit testing, I feel like I'm like, okay, I have to think of like all of the different edge cases, and like this needs to be sound, you know?
So I can appreciate that. I think for me it was the memorizing it in a way that like you had to memorize it for an exam that I didn't
Oh,
enjoy.
okay.
So that was the thing that I found difficult. My like brain doesn't work that way. Like I'm what you would consider like a generalist, like T kind of ship developer, where like I can find things out very quickly, but I don't retain a lot of information like at once. Because I'm very good at like picking it up, and so I don't like keep it all in my head. And I think the thing that I struggled with at uni was that they required you to have it all in your head for the exams, and I just really didn't enjoy doing that. It took a
That's
lot of
fair.
effort to memorize things that for me didn't feel like you could logically deduce.
That's fair. All right. So you switched to computer science, you study computer science. I'm assuming you graduate. What happens next? How do you land your first role? How do you feel once you're in your first role? Did you feel like your degree prepared you?
Kind of, but like in some ways it did, and then in some ways absolutely not. So
Okay.
there's a lot of things that I learned in my degree that I didn't appreciate at the time, but then as I've like moved throughout my career, I've realized were very useful. So things like networking, I didn't really see the purpose of it when I was doing it at university. To be honest, it just kind of went over my head. I found it really boring. But then like I work a lot now with uh, like VNets in Azure and like making things secure. And now like I realize actually how important that is and what it actually means. Whereas at the time I didn't really like care for it. And then like when I started my first role, there was a lot of things that I it was very different to what I anticipated it to be. But I think there were a few reasons why. Like it wasn't just because my degree didn't like quite prepare me for it. I think it was just that I wasn't particularly like happy in the company that I ended up going with. The company were nice, they were great. Like I just didn't feel like I had like the support around me to learn the things that I wanted to. So I really wanted to learn how to do testing very well. Like that's something that's quite important to me. And my boss, for example, didn't have any like appetite for it. And how can you learn from like a team if they don't have that appetite for it? So
Yeah,
so there were things that I feel like it would have been great if like I could have worked and identified what was it that I actually was after whilst I was doing my degree. But like sometimes it like that real world experience you don't really get until you're kind of thrown into it.
yeah, you don't really know what you don't know until you know it.
Mm.
What did you learn in that first role that helped you kind of, or hopefully helped you search for the second one? Like, were you pickier in the interview process? Like, how did you transition?
Yeah, so I think for me, like there was only a couple, like I was only working with like one in my first role. It was like one other engineer, and then like the CTO as well, and then like there was a network person as well. And so like I knew that it was going to be important that like wherever I moved, I found somewhere that like appreciated, like who had a team that like I could learn from. So when I joined my second role, they everyone who I joined was like much more experienced than me. So there's a lot of people that I could learn from. They definitely cared about like, you know, having tests within their product. It was definitely a difficult product to learn. It was like an ERP system. But like but they knew a lot about it, and everyone was very, very willing to like share their knowledge. And so it was a much better experience in that sense. So it was just about asking questions. I knew that I wanted to like learn about like unit testing. I knew that I wanted to learn more about C sharp. I knew like there were certain like criteria that I wanted to get from it. And so I just made sure that like when I was in the interview, I would ask about like what do they do for like testing, what what's the team size, who is in the team, you know, who am I going to be working with on a day-to-day basis, just to get a feel for what it is that I'm going to actually be doing. Whereas within with the first role, it was very much like I just wanted a job kind of like thing. It was just like I just I just want to get my first role. I just want to get into the industry. I didn't have a lot of confidence either, so it was just like the first place that like got me a job in the place that I wanted for the salary that I was after. I just took it.
That's fair. I mean, I feel like that's beggars can't really be choosers a little bit. Like, not saying you were a beggar, but especially like in this market, sometimes I think it's hard. So, like, what would you say for like advice for people like now trying to break into the industry? Like, what should they be like looking for in the interview process?
So I think for the first role, like it really depends on the person's situation. So if a person really needs like to pay for like, you know, food, rent and things like that, they can like not be as picky as someone who maybe they can, you know, afford to like, you know, spend a few months to 6 months like waiting for a better opportunity. So if someone really needs to get that opportunity, it is a case of okay, let's take what you can get, but let's, you know, focus on what it is that we need to get from this company to like get the next role. And so some companies that might not be the best like environment from a like burnout perspective, so they get you to work up, can actually be a great opportunity from a like learning perspective. So I would be applying all of my energy into like learning and doing what it is that I can to get out of there as quickly as possible. If I could afford to be a little bit more choosier with where I am going to go as someone who is trying to get in, then I think really it's about finding somewhere that you can learn rather than like somewhere that's going to pay really high initially, like
Yeah.
at least for like that first year, because I think you learn so much in that first year if you are in a good place versus if you are not in a good place that pays better. And that like that pay like increases significantly if you have that opportunity to learn.
I love that. What, so it seems like mentorship to you and in general is like super important. How can you kind of like vet, or like how do you know if someone's going to be a good mentor? And sometimes you just end up where you end up. So like what can you do as a mentee to like make the situation as good as possible for you?
So a lot of the time, it's not necessarily that someone can't be a good mentor. It's just that they're not the right mentor for you. So
Okay.
you really need to define like what it is that you hope to get out of a mentor, and what are your values. So some people like much better with a mentor who's very, very rigid and very, very structured and very, very like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and this by this point, because they need like direction. Whereas some do better being like just having someone who they can talk to and give advice, and like they don't necessarily need to be told what to do, but they can be prompted and then they can go ahead and do it. And they don't really like that structure. So you really need to identify like if your mentor can give you what it is that you need. I think it's a little bit of a responsibility on like the the on both sides, like so the mentor like should be able to say, I don't think this is working out, like this, I don't feel like I can give you what you need. And then a little bit of responsibility from the mentee to be able to come with questions and like basically tell them the mentor what it is they're struggling with, because that's quite hard sometimes, especially like when you have to drag it out of like the mentee and they're not giving much like information. I had a train of thought then and then I lost it. So there's like a situation for me where like it just wasn't working out with a mentee, and that just happens sometimes. They were quite defensive on any sort of feedback that I was giving, and they had a very specific way of how they wanted to work, and it was just a case of, okay, well, I don't think I can support you unless I feel like you can do these things that I'm telling you that you need to do.
Okay, so I'm hearing that communication about like what you want out of the relationship, and then also like kind of being open to feedback are really important. Which are kind of soft skills. How big of importance would you say soft skills have been in your career as a developer?
I think they've gotten more important as I've grown. I think I got away with it a lot more, kind of just being blunt when I was like starting out, or like not like necessarily being able to communicate exactly I what I like was thinking, like in a constructive way when I was starting out, and then as I've grown and I've realized I need to start like influencing people, I've realized that I need to actually develop those skills a lot more. For me, it's people. I've always found people quite interesting anyway. Like that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do psychology. So I've always found it like really important, just in general, to try and understand what it is that people need from me to give them what it is that they need to like do their job as well. So it's always been like a natural thing for me to like want to improve upon anyway. Whereas like some people just aren't necessarily that interested in it. But you do see like people who tend to have those soft skills do get like to those higher positions quicker, especially things like tech leads and especially in a place like, for example, in Microsoft, where like you just cannot go above like an IC, I think, without having those core soft skills, because it's just so important to be able to like influence your team, lead your team, mentor your team, work with your team. And if you can't, then like you're quite limited on the impact that you can give.
Mm-hmm. So I see on your LinkedIn, because I stalked you before this, that you went from lead software engineer to Microsoft, where you went to software engineer too. So can you talk a little bit about like your decision to move to Microsoft, and like how did you feel from going from lead to, I'm assuming, just an individual contributor?
Yeah, that's funny that, because I've got a video coming out in 2 days to explain this a little bit more. But like ultimately, my decision was, there's a few reasons why I decided to do that. One
Okay.
was I felt like I wasn't quite ready for the lead role. I got given the lead role because a tech lead was leaving, and
Mhm.
so they needed someone to like take over that role. I knew the most about the product and I was interested in people, and so it was something that I'd expressed that I eventually wanted to do, but like it wasn't something that I was expecting to happen so quickly. And so I got given the role. I just felt like I didn't have a lot of architecture knowledge at the time, and I wanted to gain that architecture knowledge, and I knew that like I wasn't necessarily going to be able to learn that in where I was going to be when I was the one giving those decisions.
Yeah.
And so that was one reason. And I think working at somewhere like Microsoft gives you a massive ability to learn those things that I was interested in. Another thing that I was doing was I was like studying in my own time on like Azure architecture, because that was I like working with Azure. And then the other reason was it was Microsoft. So like
Yeah.
it was
Don't
funny
say
because
no
I
to
was like, yeah, it was funny because like I sent a message to my friend when I got it. I was like, some recruiter reached out to me on Microsoft about Microsoft, and I was like I don't even know if I should go for this because this is crazy. And he's like, no, you're going for it. Like because I was pregnant at the time as well, so I was like,
Oh,
should I
wow.
really be? This is like initially I'd kind of said like this is a great opportunity, but like I'm currently pregnant. This is my situation. But then the recruiter was like, we encourage anyone to apply. It doesn't matter whether you're like pregnant or not. So I went for it anyway. So that was a really good thing actually, because Microsoft actually gave me a lot better package
Yeah.
for when I went on maternity than the place that I was in. And then the third reason was just generally like the compensation was so much better. So ideally, like it would have been nice if I got a senior role, but I was just so like starstruck at the time to even think about like negotiating. Like I was just so like, oh my
Oh,
god,
yeah,
like I've
that's a
got
good
this
point. You
role. Like,
probably could have negotiated title, right? Maybe.
yeah, yeah, it would
Okay.
have been like, but I just didn't. I felt like I didn't want to risk like saying like no or whatever. So I was just I was very nervous about it, just with like the pregnancy and things like that, and like I was quite anxious about just the general like, okay, like I don't want to lose this role type thing. So I should have probably done it like looking back, but I didn't.
Oh, well, I think we all have those moments where we're like, should have negotiated. I like your answer because I actually can really relate because I was a senior software engineer at my first job. And then I was like in a stretch role as a lead for a project. And I too switched for a SRE2 position, but it was for the same reason. I was like, wait, I moved up really quickly. And like, I feel like I still want to be mentored. I don't know if I'm like in a place where like I want to be the mentor. Like, so it's kind of cool that you did the same thing. And clearly it worked out because now you do have the senior title. So what was that like? How do you stand out, or how would you advise people to stand out in their role and move up?
So I think it's about finding opportunities where you can like increase your impact. So there's three like types of impact that you can make at Microsoft. There's individual impact, which is the impact that you make individually on like projects. There's team impact, and then there's like customer. I think it's customer impact. And then the idea is basically you get measured on those three things. So how are you like helping your teams? How are you helping your customers? How are you growing yourself throughout the business? And so it's finding opportunities to grow in those three areas. Are you able to find a way to like mentor people within your team? Are you able to find a way to make your team's life easier? Like one of the things that I took from my old jobs is I used to be a product owner, and I used to be like used to do that quite a lot. And there was a period where we didn't have that, for example,
Okay.
and I spent a lot of time like documenting the requirements, writing up user stories, writing up the system flow for a lot of the features that we were delivering. And that was the way that I delivered impact for the rest of the team, because it made their lives easier, for example. And another like way of impacting was I I got involved with like leading a group for like creating a community within our like department. So it was about how do we bring people together, how do we organize like different like events that people can get involved in. And that was another way to increase impact. And whilst I didn't necessarily do those things to get a promotion, it wasn't like, okay, if I do these things I'm going to get promoted. That is just the type of person that I am, to focus on like impacting the people around me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So while you're doing all of this at work, you're doing your job, plus you're focusing on how to help, your team, your business. You're also building a brand online. What was behind the decision to start building your brand? Was that a conscious decision, and where are you going with it?
So I think one of the things that I started posting online for was because um, it's like I just felt like there was a load of like people just posting, and they were just having these really like fluffy and um positive like conversations, but like they weren't like kind of being real about like, okay, well, this is how we actually get people like jobs. This is how like it actually happens. There's all these like niceties, and yeah, like sometimes that's needed. Sometimes people need to believe in something, but it's not helpful from a like actual actionable point of view.
Yeah.
You know, no one you can't get a job just by hoping, for example. You need to do things to actually get that job, and so that's one of the reasons why I started writing, just to kind of say, okay, well, um, yeah, we actually need to like do things to like make actionable steps. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is doing that in an incremental way, because I think if you like tell someone that they need to get to Z when they're only at A, they're not gonna be able to get there, and they're just gonna get overwhelmed. So you really need to like identify why like what stage people are at, because people are at very different stages, which is one of the reasons why I believe mentorship is much more valuable than like just doing some random course, because a random course isn't going to identify what your level is at, and like a lot of people, like everyone who I've mentored have very very different like needs. Like some people are really good at the technical, some people are really good at the like picking things up, some people are really good at like actual like the soft skill side, but they all need different things. So that's mainly the reason like I wanted to help people get into tech and like be real about it.
Yeah, I like that. So, what is kind of like, I also find that it's hard, and I like that you are doing this individual mentorship thing, because I'm over here like, I'm gonna just give you a one size fits all course, right? But I feel like it would be really hard to like, there's so many different areas of like software engineering to go into, and there's so many different like goals that you can have. How do you help identify someone in an early career position, like where they want to go, and like how do you help them get there? That seems complicated to me.
So like, do you mean like when starting out, or just when generally working with them?
Uh, Both, I guess. Like, do you identify when starting out, like what the end goal is? And like, do people know what their end goal is, or is it just land a role?
So a lot of the time, the goal for most people is to get a goal, like to get that role. I spend a little bit of time with mentees who like are able to like who are able to like basically focus on having options of, okay, well, let's focus on picking the right thing forward rather than just picking the first thing that comes our way. um so it really just depends on the person and who they are. Like most of the time it is to get that initial role. That's most of the time. That is what my free mentorship is for, is to help people on their first role. But like making sure that they pick the role that's right for them rather than just a role is also important.
For sure. So we are coming to the end of our half hour. Is there anything that you want to plug or share with the 5 people that will watch this video?
So I've gone all blank now. And like, so it's like, oh, tell me about yourself, and you go all blank. That's me right now. So just to who is this just getting shared with? Like,
This will go on the Coding with Callie YouTube channel. I make the joke that 5 people will listen, probably actually like 100 people, but not that many.
Sorry, I'm just, I take things quite literally sometimes. So I was like, who are these 5 people? Who are they going to be?
Mostly, I would say mostly junior developers looking for that first role is who I would say most of the Coding with Callie community is.
Yep. So so the thing that I try and say to people who I haven't spoke with before is to look at, like, there's a few, like, for getting a role, like, there tends to be like 4 key areas that I see, like, that comes up in interviews. One is like data structure and algorithms. One is uh like system design. One is building projects, and one is behavioral skills. And so, like, I try and identify like which 4, like, out of the 4 of those is the thing that you're struggling with most, and then try and apply your energy to that. The only caveat with that being is, if someone really does struggle with data structure and algorithms, you don't necessarily need that for a lot of roles. But like, it really depends on what like you identify as the company that you want to go into, because certain companies you absolutely need that, but the other 3, absolutely, you need to focus on those areas of improving those. And everyone has very different strengths and opportunities, what people say these days. And so identify which ones you do need to work on, because there's no point getting really good at one and then neglecting the others, which seems to be what some people do sometimes. So you need to build on the areas that you're weak at too.
Okay, so more of the story is I should try LeetCode is what we're saying.
No, that's what I mean. Like, the data structure and algorithms one is the only one where I think if you absolutely do not want to do it, then you will still be able to find a role without it. You'll just be limited on the amount of roles, if that makes sense. So, like, you will not be able to go to like certain companies like what require it, like Google and big companies like that. Like, even like Microsoft in some places. I didn't need to do a DSA question when I joined, but I am the exception rather than the rule, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Like, the
nice.
majority of people I know, have had to do a LeetCode assessment. It just so happened that when I got interviewed, they just didn't do it for like my round, and then they sometimes don't do it for seniors and leads as well. It depends on the amount of applicants they get, I think.
Okay. I applied it. Well, I tried to apply to Microsoft once and they were like, wait, you don't have a CS degree? Nah, you can't even apply.
Really?
No,
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Like, I
they had a box
think
there
in
like,
the US.
check this if you have a CS degree. And I was like, well, I'm not going to lie. I don't have a CS degree. They're like, please go check back later.
Wow, like, I think that must be like a US thing, because I've never seen that on an application here.
Maybe. It's all right. It all worked out. I like it. But anyways, dude, thanks so much for chatting with me today and pinging people connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yes. So my like name is Jay Wilson. My like I'll give Callie my links, but it's Jade codes generally. Like either Jade dash codes or Jade dot codes, depending on the socials, because some socials decide that you are not allowed dashes. So.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, thanks so much, and I will talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, and lovely to be on here with you. Thank you.
Of course. Bye, Jade.
Bye.